So the third presenter, speaker for the session here, Tony Chainho from the Canadian Forces Joint Warfare Centre. Tony, welcome. Do you have your slides ready to show?
Good morning. So I do. Unfortunately, my D1 laptop isn't really cooperating this morning. So I'm going to just start off so everybody can see my face here. And I'll just introduce myself, and then I'm going to switch over to my desktop that doesn't have a webcam. And then I'll conduct the presentation over there. So hopefully it should work out. If it doesn't, if I can get somebody to present my slides for me, that would be great. We
can present the slides for you if that's necessary. But if you've got a plan,
I've got a plan. We're going to see how good the execution goes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Chainho. I'm from the Canadian Joint Warfare Centre here in Ottawa. I'm going to be giving you a short brief on our wargaming section and what we've been involved in for the last year. I took over from Scott Roach, if anybody remembers his brief from last year. So this is also the first virtual brief I'm going to be delivering that's recorded. So I've got somewhat of a fear of turning on a filter and somehow becoming the next viral video. Again, I assure you, I am not a cat. I am indeed a real person. So I'm going to move on. So I'm going to just switch over right now from my cell over to my desktop. So again, just give me 1 second.
You currently seem to be muted, Tony.
Right, it looks as if we have a problem with audio. So perhaps if we can, Tony, if you can revert to your phone, and we'll push the slides for you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that, folks. Apologies. And can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. All right, look at that.
Okay, we're up and running.
Apologies. All right. So again, I assure you, I'm not a cat. I am indeed a real person. So the aim of today's presentation is just to give you a quick introduction to the Canadian Warfare Centre and our wargaming section, and how our mission is to enhance the preparedness of the joint forces and operate in a pan-domain environment, and sort of what that means to us and how we're trying to achieve that. And again, keeping in mind that like pretty much every organization, it's become much more difficult to do during a COVID environment. So the Canadian Joint Warfare Centre has a mission to foster improvement within the joint force in order to enhance the preparedness of the joint forces and operations in that pan-domain environment. This year, the wargaming section relocated to the Joint Research and Analysis branch. So we were initially in the JWES, so like where folks look at simulation and experimentation. And we definitely feel that like this move over to the Joint Analysis branch has aided our ability to kind of demonstrate our capabilities and how we can be involved in the decision-making process. As you can see from the bottom right hand on the slide there, we are a fairly small section. So I'm the one uniform section head member of the team. And then I have three fantastic contractors, Mr. David Redpath, and Mr. John Jeffrey, and Ms. Brianna Proseve, who are all here today. Again, so looking at slide 4, so what does it mean to be a wargamer at the Joint Warfare Centre, and what does our daily life? What do our daily lives look like? As you can see from the slide, we're focusing on the ability of wargames to support trialing and testing. And so within the CAF, that usually means looking at courses of action built into contingency plans. So since wargaming is a fairly new capability within the Warfare Center and our parent CAF organization, that being the Canadian Joint Operations Command, we schedule a number of play tests throughout the year to promote wargaming and best practices and educate senior staff officers who are in charge of putting together the aforementioned con plans and courses of action. We try to keep in mind at all times that these games aren't just for ourselves; they are for our clients, and our clients are always operationally focused. So we need to just, keep in mind that like how is this going to be involved within the CAF, and what purpose is it, and what are people getting out of it when we present it to them. So one advantage we have of being a CAF entity is, we're situated within CJWC, and we're able to access quite a bit of information when it comes to upcoming events and exercises, and deployments, etc. So, what we can see oftentimes is that, we can see things coming just based on, confidential briefs that we have access to that are going up to our commanders. And as a new capability, our goal is always to be raising awareness of how our work can be utilized for a specific task within that operational organization. Very often we find ourselves myth busting. So myth busting is also something we have to be aware of when reaching out to potential clients. What we're trying to convey is that the process doesn't have to be something that's cumbersome, that it can be extremely agile and definitely have an effect on their ability to plan. So we always try to sort of to pass on to potential clients that our team is going to do the lion's share of the work. We realize that planning takes a significant amount of time, and when these organizations are thinking about utilizing a new technique, that there's always this fear that's going to significantly increase the amount of time that it's going to take to deliver an operational effect to the commander. So we always try to ensure and reassure our clients that we are going to take the lion's share of that work, and we're going to make sure that we work within their timelines. The next slide here. So again, like I said, so one of our advantages is that we are a part of CJWC, and that we are intimately involved and aware of what their main planning requirements are and what exercises and operations they have ongoing at all times. So some of these organizations that you see listed here is we see sort of as our primary audience. These are the units and organizations that are tasked by CJWC to deploy. A number of them have very short readiness requirements, and that they need to be out the door fairly quick. Whether that's for something like an op lentis, that might be our contribution to a environmental disaster that occurs within Canadian land or waters, or it's in a deployment overseas to participate in an allied operation, etc. So again, we'd try to keep in mind that we do have a lot of access to info, and we need to always ensure that the games we're designing and the things we're doing are tied into those priorities and criteria that the commanders are looking at. So now I'm going to get into just a few of the events that we've done this year. So the first one that we'll talk about is Exercise Vigilant Shield. So initially we started planning Exercise Vigilant Shield, or assisting in the planning of Exercise Vigilant Shield 21. Unfortunately, due to COVID, that was turned off. And now we're into the planning of Vigilant Shield 22, which is scheduled to occur later this year. So we developed a game in support of Vigilant Shield. This is an annual NORAD-led exercise in the defense of North America. The aim of the game is to test the CAF's ability to conduct operations and defend North America from potential threats in a contested and limited environment like the Canadian Arctic. So noting that the Arctic is incredibly vast, it's isolated, and it's home to some extreme weather conditions and challenges that's unique to this game. So we focused on logistics and how we can move units and kit into locations up north, and how we would keep those organizations equipped. We also looked at C4ISR and how we can survey such a large area with some limited assets, and as well as the maneuverability and where you can allocate and divide aircraft to provide the most effective screen to your operations. So how did the game work? Blue Force was instructed to conduct activities as they would in reality within a given scenario. And then the Red Force was challenged to penetrate those forces and defenses and exploit and possibly attack weak points. So some of the important game features that we're fairly proud of is weather. So, we took into account how weather limits and weather patterns. So and how it's going to limit ISR and C2. We also looked at ranges of radars and weapons, aircraft and air identification zones that are currently in place. And there's fuel is a critical in labor. So how do you get enough fuel up there to support operations over an extended period of time? And as well as lastly, so the fog of war, so allocation of priorities and how you're going to conduct the damage assessment after certain attacks, and how we would pass that information from blue to red and red to blue. The next game that we were involved in was fairly unique to Wargaming, I think, and it took quite a bit of work and thinking from my team on how to best support an organization like CFINCOM, so the Canadian Forces Intelligence Command. So we were tasked with creating a war game to sort of look and determine the optimal organization structure for CFINCOM. So the war game itself was conducted in 3 phases. We conducted interviews with key internal and external stakeholders within that community. And this provided, well over 500 data points for us to measure, and take a look at like what would make things better based on their current situation. Construction of a new organizational chart via consensus from the team was then conducted. So this was done in real time with everyone in a room within that looking at the current organizational structure as a starting point. And then with each turn, participants were divided randomly into groups. And we did that in order to sort of avoid that group consensus, because there's always the chance that one group is going to have a large number of very senior people who were going to take over that war game. So we divided everybody randomly into groups, and we started each turn with a problem statement. We provided them time to solve it, by a choice in moves. They could create something, they could merge or split organizations, or they could move an entire entity into a different reporting line. So the problem statements were based on functional areas, where a majority of those personnel interviewed had sort of indicated that these things could be improved. Participants then challenged and voted on each group's proposed solution. We were a bit worried that everyone's just going to vote for their own idea, but this, didn't become the case. It was really great to see that people changed their minds based, even based on their own group's consensus. They said, no, that's a much better plan there. And so what we aim to do is, you'll see the different colors. A green meant that everybody agreed and that we had consensus of over 75%. Orange meant that there was over 50% consensus, but less than 75. Sorry, that was orange. And then yellow remained unresolved and, requires further investigation. And blue remains, everyone enjoys the status quo, and everyone agrees that this is functioning well and that there's no reason to change that organization. So the third phase then was a proof test of this new organizational structure using a number of scenarios provided by clients of CFINCOM. So we thought that was quite important, where the scenario and that were provided were not from CFINCOM, but from their clients. So the major intelligence organizations within the elements that require information and support from CFINCOM. So we used a list. So we used those scenarios to sort of test the new structure and to see how effective it was. And we'd like to believe that it demonstrated that the organizational chart that was developed seemed to solve a lot of the issues that may or may not exist in its current state. So moving on to OWS. So we've play tested on multiple occasions there the U.S. Marine Corps' operational war game system. So it's an affiliated series of games. So what they've done is they've developed different games for different regions. The U.S. Marine Corps doesn't seem to be tied down to not using actual geography and countries. So they've been very open about where these war games are taking place and who is participating in them. But they've developed different scenarios all around the world. Some in Europe, some in the Baltic, some in Southeast Asia. So there's a number of them that have been tested. So the vision of this game is to enhance the capability at the operational wargaming, at professional level of wargaming in a professional military education and HQs all across different forces and elements. It aims to deliver a tabletop and virtual tabletop game that contains the orders of battle and maps to enable a rapid scenario generation. So I think their idea is that they have a toolkit that's a great jumping off point. Really, all you need to do is add the scenario that you intend on testing. So we had two of our members participated. So Mr. Sean Jeffries and Mr. David Redpath. They went head to head. There's a bit of contention on who was victorious over who, but they may have some points at the end of this on how that war game went. And I'll just move on to the next one here. So the last one, the last thing that we'd like to talk about is our Wargaming Advisors course. So we've developed a course whose purpose is not only to act as an intro to wargaming, but wargaming best practices and how they can be used for professional purposes. And so the main goal out of that wargaming course is to have a group of personnel that then go out to their organizations and can act as a liaison members between the war game designers and the clients. So so we want to educate those personnel on what we can deliver and where a war game would be best utilized in order to support their commanders' goals. We also wanted to dispel misconceptions surrounding wargaming and to provide just a baseline of, again, where war games are most effective. And ideally, we'd like to grow the community of war gamers within the CAF with respect to potential climates, and just a better network of war gamers throughout the CAF. Sorry, and I'll just note that that course was run in November of 2021, and the next scheduled course is for the last week of April 2022 or first week of May 2022. We're just looking to book sites, etc., and send out a message for CAF members who may be interested in participating. So the future of wargaming within the CAF and the way we envision it. So we want to continue educating the operational staffs on the uses of wargaming. We also want to consolidate and expand our network within the CAF and within our allies. And finally, we want to continue to develop our capacity to deliver distributed and digital war games. We're currently trialing Vassal on a secure network within the CAF. It's called CFXNet. And we're also investigating the use of the US program SWIFT. This is a system that's going to be utilized for an upcoming war game that's being conducted down in the US called Global Integrated War Game, where we've got a few of our members that will be participating in their white cell. So lastly, this is just a representation of the organizations that we worked with in the past and a few that we plan on working with in the future in order to expand our network. And that's about all I have. I'm going to open it to questions now, if anyone has any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tony. It's a very good overview of a number of interesting pieces of work we've been doing over the last year or so. And welcome the Connections North family as a first time briefer. We had some questions in the text, but your team largely answered them in the text. So we'll just run over them to make, in case people aren't following the conversation in the text. The first question was Steve Domenico, asking whether you are now organizationally separated from the Shirley's Bay based people who were focusing on force development. Should say again for those outside the tent. The Warfare Center is on the Shirley's Bay campus to the west of Ottawa, where there are a number of other sort of facilities and groups based there. So I guess the question is, organizationally, are you separate from force development? And I think the question has been answered as yes. the focus, you directly point to the Chief of Joint Operations Command from the Warfare Center, and Force Development sits elsewhere. But if there's anything you'd like to sort of comment on that further, then please do.
So yeah, so I arrived in was it last July, so July 2021. So I have only been here post-COVID. I've never been here pre-COVID. My suspicion is that pre-COVID, the different folks that work within the Shirley's Bay campus probably worked quite a bit more together than they do right now, just based on their geographic locations, and that we don't run into each other coming into the campus. But yeah, so we do answer to CJWC, our operational commander. But again, we can be tasked by CJWC to support a number of various organizations. So in the past, when we've worked with CFD, Canadian Force Development, that's how that's worked. Is there's been a request, it goes up to CJWC, and then they task us to support that goal.
So the next question was talking about climate change. Justin Souls asked whether there are any plans to adjust war games like Vigilant Shield to account for the effects of climate change, like longer ice-free periods, more extreme weather in the Arctic, and so on. Again, in the chat, the team have basically said that Vigilant Shield is set in the here and now, therefore we use data as it is. But I don't know, but if you have any other sort of further sort of comment to add to that, then please do.
I'll make a comment, and then afterwards I'll open it to Brianna if she wants to add anything. But the idea how we wanted to account for climate, or at least weather, we'll call it, so short-term weather patterns, is to look at that time frame where the war game or the exercise is going to take place, and look at those actual real weather patterns and identify like what it actually looks like when these organizations will be operating out there, and incorporate weather into that, and again look at that last 5 years trend. But I'll open up to Brianna if she's got anything else.
Oh, Tony, you nailed it. We studied basically the ice patterns. And so were this game to take place in 5 years, yes, there would be a greater opening. The effect being largely that it would allow for more maritime travel. But since the game is currently set in 2022, or previously in 2021, we were just using current predictions for ice levels, weather, so on.
Okay, thank you, Brianna, and very, very, very clear. And it's, I think it's a topic that a number of people raise, and we had this, as Murray mentioned earlier, with the fish game, which was all premised on greater accessibility in the future to the Arctic. But you do need to set your game in the appropriate time horizon, and that sort of is a general issue. If you are planning for the future, modeling the future is a good idea. If you're planning what you can do in the here and now, we model the here and now, and that's a basic principle I'm sure you will follow. So the next question we had in the chat, so from Justin Souls, in terms of building a wargaming expertise network with other national or international organizations, what are some of the challenges or gotchas that you've run into when building this out?
I think a major challenge right now is that there's a lot of different organizations who have small teams who are allocated towards wargaming, and we don't always know about each other, and everyone's sort of supporting their commander. So I think, as wargamers within the Canadian government, we would definitely benefit from having, a formal group, or we'll call it informal group, or folks can pass on lessons learned and just let each other know about what they're doing. So we've had a few discussions about how we could do that, maybe using MS Teams and some of the abilities there where you can put together a group, or or other methods. But yeah, I think that the biggest challenge is knowing who's out there and what they're doing. And again, being very Canadian, we're always a small team. We're never going to be able to throw 50 people at a problem. There's probably 3 of us, and we might be trying to hire a 4th, best case scenario. So I think just that our sheer size really limits our ability to go further than we wanted, than what we're actually doing right now.
Okay, that's a very interesting point, and I'm sure we're going to come back to that sort of later on the institutional update panel. But I know that Madeleine Johnson just wants to interject here and say something.
Yes, and just on that point about networking, this is something, and I'm not going to go too far into this, but just to say that coming from GAC and the diplomatic world, I mean, this is obviously sort of our bread and butter, and also an objective of what I've been doing in my position. And so part of that is a bit of the gaming brown bag session is a chance to sort of, just like what's happening here in the chat, to have people kind of see the names, who's there, who's around, have that opportunity to discuss. But also that this is a really, really important aspect of what gaming is and the growth of this tool across the government. And again, I don't want to go too far into this, but it also sort of segues a little bit, as Rex will mention, in terms of just having that capacity, even within this Connections North meeting in the next break, to be able to have that opportunity to discuss a little bit. But I am looking to do that and starting to do that a little bit more formally.
Okay, thanks, Madeline. And yeah, there is a network growing, and this conference and the people meeting through it are part of that process. But yes, we're sure that there's much to be done in connecting up our twosies and threesies into something bigger. At the moment, from Jeremy Cutts, do your wargames consider resource management, things like fuel, ammunition, troop fatigue, etc.? Or is it solely focused, it says here, on achieving objectives, I guess? Yeah. Are you focused on assuming everybody's working? Assuming everything works and everything's available, can you achieve the objectives, or is there a more nuanced reflection of the resource logistics constraints?
So part of that, the war game design for a team is to look at what's in the realm of possibility, right? So there's documents out there that'll indicate, what type of, CAF units are going to be available for a specific type of mission. And then again, what we aim to do is to do that research and provide, plausible scenarios as a kickoff point, right? So if you have 5 aircraft allocated for a particular mission, we're going to do the research, and we're at the game start, we're going to tell folks, yeah, you're going to have 3 of these aircraft available anytime to use, and this is why. And we'll look for organizations to challenge us on that, but we'll do the research and indicate, the reality is that you're probably going to have a limited force based on what you allocate.
Okay. And sorry, and a question. Sorry. Last question coming in from Greg Linton. Just for those who don't know, what is the Gaming Brown Bag Session? So I'll explain that. This is an initiative that Madeline has been running with. She has a distribution list, and we have a series of invited sort of informal presentations, sort of roughly once every month or so, occasionally there are gaps, but essentially bringing people who are interested in the professional application of gaming within the federal government together to share experiences and so on. So that is part of the building of a community, building of a network, and yeah, there's a wide open membership. And Madeline, I think, has placed contact details in the chat previously. But if you want to be on the distribution list for those, yeah, then it's yeah, similar to a lunch and learn session. Yeah, very much not sort of formalized, carefully reviewed, choreographed, sort of managed presentations, just sort of inviting people with something to say, or who've got a message to spread understanding of the different kinds of approaches, different kinds of organizations and techniques that are being used. So yeah, lunch and learn for Canadian gamers,